Limbo. The first layer of hell is Limbo. This is where good people go if they lived before the existence of Jesus Christ. The idea is that since they existed before Christ, they can't go to heaven, but at the same time, if they weren't evil, they end up here. Limbo is basically planet Earth but without death. There is no torture, and it's basically just a waiting room for when people were waiting for Jesus to come to Earth and die on the cross. Here you can find people like unbaptized babies, Julius Caesar, Aristotle, and Socrates. According to Dante, the writer of the story, when Jesus was born, a lot of these people actually went to heaven. Lust. In this layer, the punishment is really strong winds, like a tornado. People are pushed back and forth by these winds so that they can never rest. The idea is to simulate how they lived their lives. Gluttony. In the third layer, gluttony, it's constantly snowing and raining so that people are constantly uncomfortable, cold, and miserable, like in the UK. Also, Cerberus, which is a three-headed dog, is constantly going around shredding people. He bites someone in half, and since death doesn't exist down here because people are already dead, they have to wait however long to heal up until they are ripped apart by Cerberus again. Greed. Dante describes this layer as if there were two massive waves of people running into each other violently. One side contains members of the church, and the other just normal people who were greedy throughout their life. They also have to move around massive heavy bags of money with their chests, like boulders. The idea is that since they fought other people over money back on Earth, they are now trapped in here, forced to fight other greedy people just like them. Also, Dante says that these people have been fighting so violently for so long that they are not even recognizable anymore. Their faces are so beat up and smashed in that everyone just looks like a disfigured human body forever fighting each other over nothing. Wrath. Wrath represents people who are angry all the time during their life. The torture in this layer is a deep river of mud where people are fighting each other and bury each other to try to come up on top so they don't drown. Dante mentions bubbles in the river and says that these bubbles are people so deep in the mud screaming or trying to grasp for air. Heresy. Heresy here means influencing people to strain away from God. Heresy means to choose, which is when you pick and choose or customize Christianity. So for example, saying like, I want to believe in God and Jesus, but I don't want any of the suffering or commitment is considered heresy. From here on out, torture takes a turn. Up until this point, all layers were pretty much just a state of misery, torment, and discomfort, but not an active torture. But in this layer, this changes, as from now on, people are getting actively tortured. For example, in the second layer, gluttony, Cerberus goes around tearing people apart, but there are people laying down playing dead so that Cerberus doesn't see them. That's a way of avoiding the punishment in that layer, but from now on, that doesn't happen anymore. The idea for that is that in all other layers, the sins those people committed were just towards themselves, but they didn't hurt other people. But from layer 6 all the way to 9, these are sins that damage other people, hence why the suffering changes. So the punishment here is that people are laying down in coffins and are constantly being poked and engulfed in flames, constantly burning forever. And there are fallen angels around that make sure everyone is being tortured. Violence. The 7th layer, violence, is divided into 3 parts: the river Phlegethon, the dark forest, and the sand pit. The river Phlegethon is a river made of boiling blood with people inside drowning. This first part of the layer has people who committed violence against others, so murderers end up down here. By the river, there are centaurs with bows and arrows making sure that no one crawls out of the river. The second part of this layer is for people who committed violence against themselves. According to Dante, committing violence against yourself is worse than committing violence against others. That's because this means you are denying the gift God gave you, which is life, and having a perfect body made in His image. So that's why suicide is considered worse than murder. This dark forest is filled with dead trees and harpies, which are a type of half bird, half human. The dead trees are the people. They have been turned into these trees that grow fruits for the harpies to eat. And it's like as if the harpies were eating part of their body, so it's very painful. And the third part is for people who committed violence against God, so like people who committed bestiality and debt collectors. There are flakes of fire pouring down, constantly hitting the sand, making it scalding hot. So these people are walking on sand, constantly getting third-degree burns on their feet. And if you sit down or lay down, you get stuck in that position for 100 years. Fraud. Fraud is the 8th layer of hell because it preys on other people's kindness and love, making it one of the worst sins someone can commit. Fraud has 10 different parts based on the kinds of fraud people commit. Each type of fraud is separated by a stone trench, kind of like a pit. The first trench is deceiving love, like human traffickers who sell their family members to gangs, mafias, cartels, rich people, pimps, etc. Their punishment is to run across the trench as demons whip them if they go too slow. The second trench is deceptive speakers, like liars. The punishment is that this trench is filled with poop, where people drown and shove each other down to try to come up. The third trench is simonists, who are people of the church who asked for donations but used that money for their own personal benefit. This trench is scalding hot, and the only way to escape the heat is by burying yourself in holes in the ground. The fourth trench is for witches, and the punishment is that they all have their heads twisted backwards. Fifth trench is a pit of boiling oil for people who exchange money for political power. Sixth trench is pretty calm compared to the others, where the punishment here is to just wear very heavy robes. This pit is for hypocrites. The seventh trench is for thieves. The punishment is that this pit is filled with snake-like creatures that are constantly stinging people. And when they get stung, they turn into ashes and quickly heal up again. The eighth trench is for corrupt or incompetent leaders. The punishment is to just burn forever. Ninth trench is a sea of limbs for people that have caused trouble. The limbs is from people getting torn apart by demons. And the 10th trench is a bit different than the others. It's for falsifiers, and it's pitch black, and the people are covered in fish scales that itch a lot. So the people scratch their skin to the bone, essentially skinning themselves alive using their own fingernails. Treason. The 9th layer is also divided into 4 parts: family betrayal, country betrayal, friendship betrayal, and betrayal of God. This entire circle is a frozen lake. The first part has people frozen under the lake all the way to their necks, so that their heads are sticking out. The second part is similar, but the people are frozen halfway to their heads. The third part is for traitors to guests. It's like the previous part, except instead of being frozen upright, they are horizontal with just their faces sticking out of the ice. And the last part is for people who betrayed God. This is the last part of the last layer of hell. The people here are completely frozen under the lake, and of course, Lucifer is here too. However, only his bottom half is frozen, and he has 3 heads. The heads on the right and left are chewing on Cassius and Brutus, the Roman senators who betrayed and murdered Julius Caesar. And the head in the middle is chewing on Judas. And Judas's back is being skinned by Satan's claws.